So, toward the end of August, when many of us were all gearing up for a brand new school year, The Guardian published an article online with the title, I'm going to read it, I'm all for forest school, just not the one I pulled my children out of. So, in a nutshell, the author described how excited she was to give her child a quote, wholesome summer camp experience. But then she pulled her children out after just one day because, again, quote, the people running the thing didn't occupy her children with any activities, and they spent the entire time, her words, just loafing about. So I'm going to put aside um, whatever the particulars of that program were, whether it was a week long or something longer, whatever the cost was, whatever was or was not promised about the program. I'm also going to put aside the wisdom of a parent pulling a child out after a single session. Um, Based presumably on unobserved intuition or questions she asked her children, based on not necessarily knowing what actually happened the whole day. Um, I'm even going to put aside what could be reasonable expectations for a fun summer camp experience. And I'm going to say that this article, though, if you take it at face value, is actually an excellent argument for the need for documentation. So I am Nicole Trevellis Frapel, and this is Wildwood Teaching. Last week, I covered how standards should not become the focus of an emergent nature-based preschool, but are helpful in knowing what milestones children can reach for and in having conversations with parents. So today we're going to talk about how those standards can be incorporated into documentation and why documentation is important. And now there is a belief in many emergent child-led and forest school environments that standards and assessments are complete anathema. So that tracking children's progress in any way takes away from the child's agency and the playful nature of your session. However, would you keep following a path if you didn't know that it would get you to a destination or provide some meaningful experience in some way? Would you keep hiking if you didn't get anything out of it? And would you expect, most importantly, would you expect other people to follow you on that path if they didn't believe you knew where you were going or had a purpose to what you were doing? Probably not. So I totally understand the desire not to put pressure on children to develop in the same way as other children or to constrict children's play and exploration with an adult perspective of what should be happening, or to assume that your adult goal or anyone's adult goal is the same as the child's goal in the moment. I mean, those of us in the nature and play-based emergent curriculum world, we trust children to set their own goals and define their own path. We definitely believe that play is the way, but that very acknowledgement points to a larger purpose. Play is the way to what? we educators must believe that we have a purpose. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. I mean, that purpose doesn't necessarily have to be state standards. I mean, it could be, but it could also be giving children a chance to socialize with other children in a multitude of contexts. It could be nurturing independence or survival skills. It could be connecting children to the natural world. It could be something as simple as giving children fresh air. But whatever your purpose, this is where documentation can be so powerful. Right? In simple terms, documentation is a record of something that happened. Right? It shows what was accomplished, whatever that goal might be. And it can take many forms. It could be a story. It could be a photograph. It could be an artifact that the children created. Effective documentation is going to tell the story for us. Okay? A story that the author of that Guardian article wasn't able to see on her own. It can be the perfect way to help parents understand the power of play. That is not just, in her words, loafing about. So, in other words, you're showing the parent, here's the picture and the story of what your child was playing and doing. And now I, as a teacher, am going to point out all of the wonderful growth that this story shows us about your child. It's going to show that their time was meaningful and purposeful here at school. And it doesn't involve prescribing a particular task to children or interrupting the flow of their play, just in finding the learning within that play. So, for example, last week I read The Very Busy Spider to the children. I mean, you all know the book, right? Eric Carle's book about the spider who takes rides on her silky thread all the way to a farm post and then begins to construct her web while all of the other farm animals try to interrupt her progress. At some point after I had read the book, one of the children called me over very, very excited. And I should point out that this child is an English language learner. And so pointed out, Nicole, a silky thread. And sure enough, there was a spider web kind of between a piece of wood and the ground, stretching across it. And I said, you're right, there is a spider web right there. And he went further and he pointed to the wood and said, and there's the fence post. So, of course, I immediately took a picture of him pointing at the spider web and quickly jotted down some notes about what he said so that I can talk to the parents about not only the English vocabulary that he was learning, but story comprehension. Hey, here he was listening to the story and then connecting it to his real life experience. And documentation can also serve other purposes, right? It can now inform my teaching. Again, not prescribing, but offering extensions and new opportunities so that the children can grow. And this is how we move play in new directions so that children can continue learning. So, for example, this year, my children are very into building things out of blocks, whatever they can find. And so after we closely observed and documented their conversations about putting natural materials together, my co-teacher and I decided that we would bring in books about animal builders. right? Spiders, birds, beavers. And sure enough, after we read just one of these books, the children started incorporating these ideas into their play. And for the past week and a half, they have been busily constructing beaver dams and testing them and adding mud as an adhesive or as insulation, of figuring out how high their dams can go, figuring out how to get that dome shape. Um, and documentation can also be discussed with the children. So at some point now, I might take out the photographs that I've had of them working on their beaver dams and initiate a discussion with them. You know, what were you thinking about when you were making this beaver dam? What were the problems that came up? How did you solve them? Right? So this type of meta-analysis is really powerful in helping children then transfer whatever those learning behaviors were, the successful ones, to other situations. And so documentation is essential to play and nature-based settings. And I'm going to say even more essential in those settings than in a more highly prescribed setting. Because if you're designing a lesson specifically to teach a particular learning goal, then everyone knows what subject or what skill is being practiced. But in play and nature-based setting, every child might be working on a different skill at the same time. And so documentation is a way to record the skills that a child is working on, note their growth and development, to inform conversations with parents, plan future teaching, and help children recognize and reflect upon their own growth. Now, I've attached a PDF to this video that gives you some ideas on different ways that you can document children's learning. And that is to help you or to help parents, like the one who wrote the Guardian article that I referred to in the beginning, to see the value of play and nature-based education. So I hope you will download the PDF, try out at least one of the ideas. If you have questions, or if you're ready to move on to the next step of how to use that documentation within conversations, within your teaching, I encourage you to get in touch with me through my Facebook page, through your Instagram account. You can comment beneath this video because Wildwood Teaching is here to help you. And then I encourage you to join me here next week when I will be talking about sticks, all the different ways that you can use the magical stick to teach different parts of your preschool curriculum. I will see you there.